Halloween Kills. I don't know, buddy. Evil was supposed to die in the last fucking film. But after seeing this movie, let's fucking hope so. So it may come as a shock to a lot of you, but I've only actually seen the original Halloween as well as the new trilogy. This film this film kills, and the 2018 one, which is apparently fine because these films do serve as like the new and improved sequels to the original film, ignoring all the rest. Now, I mentioned that because yes, while I haven't seen any of the other in-betweeners, I have seen the Rob Zombie films, but I have not seen like Halloween H2O or Season of the Witch. But I'm saying this because I know that there are some bad ones out there, and that, like, knowing that, along with, you know, what some even die-hard Halloween fans and, you know, critics have been saying about this movie, it was like equally pushing me more and more away from actually seeing this film, but also just reeled in my curiosity just as much. Now, I will say, one of the things that does go in hand with that, with my curiosity, is that people are not saying only that this is one of the, you know, worst films in the Halloween franchise, but it is actually the worst in the franchise, and also one of the worst movies that they've ever seen. Now, with me actually seeing a recent horror film that was part of a franchise, that was actually one of the worst horror films I've seen this year. I had to just give in and see the movie. So let's talk about Halloween Ends, guys. So right off the bat, I am going to say that this film does not feel at all like Halloween. Not like the 2018 film, not even like Halloween Kills. Everything from the choice of music to literally, honestly, like fucking everything. The setup isn't engaging, the pacing goes nowhere, and even in comparison to the last two, yes, including Halloween Kills, the budget here feels absolutely just ludicrous. Now, I will say, this intro isn't bad in the sense of, like, there's no fun to be had. I mean, don't get me wrong, this opener is pretty trash, but there was a certain moment during this intro that, and I'm going to try my best to not spoil as much as I can from this movie, but there is a certain point in this intro that does involve a pretty surprising type of person for a death. But here's the thing, like, while that was probably the only kind of, like, fun I had with this opener, it's not good at all. Believe me, it's fun for the wrong reasons. But even this death scene, and a lot of the death scenes in this movie, they do feel pretty fucking cheap and pretty just honestly careless compared to even honestly Halloween Kills' death scenes. Like, don't get me wrong, the kills in Halloween Kills, they aren't the greatest, right? They're not the greatest. But at least the kills are fun enough. You know, like, I just saw this movie, and I'm having a hard time remembering the kills, besides the one I'm talking about right now. But when I think about Halloween Kills, which I've only seen, I believe, once, I still remember, you know, Big John and Little John. And honestly, that kind of gives me plenty to work with, if I'm being brutally honest with you guys. But immediately after this, as we go, you know, forward into, you know, once the opener is kind of done, we're immediately thrown into, like, a monologue of flashbacks, which, you know, consist of, you know, material from the previous two films as well as the 1978 film. And this actually has Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, narrating the whole thing as she's now, like, writing a book. And then immediately after that, we just get thrown into the most lazy, most random-ass fucking interlude to seeing her and her niece, Allison, from the previous two movies, just living with each other and, you know, just living their fucking lives. Now, when I think about this, like, when I pause and think about what I'm saying, and like how I'm even picturing it as I describe it, it doesn't sound or seem all that bad. Like, it's not the worst, you know, thing in a movie. But the problem is, you know, from the ending of Halloween Kills, with this, you know, going forward from that, you know, being this final showdown the final stand, and having that layer present and front and center even, there should be a sense of maturity and a sense of seriousness and that sense of just, all the hell that has, led up to this and all the trauma. And again, this should just feel a lot more just gritty and a lot more bold than it ended up feeling. And especially what Laurie Strode and even Haddonfield has, gone through up to this point. There should be a tone here that has, been heavier than all the rest. That really make this feel like this is it. There is no more bullshit. There is no more, fucking playing around and, prolonging shit. Like, this is it. Laurie Strode has had it up to here. This is how this film should feel, and it fucking doesn't. Now, I'll say this. The storyline here, I do think it is at least, generic as far as, introducing this, new character, this, a very specific character in here. And even, tying Laurie Strode into that, the movie does it in a fashion where they're at least attempting, to make her front and center and attempting to, make her more or less one of the more, standouts of the movie. And even, there are some certain characters in here that, kind of give the audience, the guilty pleasure of, maybe fantasizing about where certain characters' fates may lie due to their, development. But here's the problem, is that everything in the film up to this point, as well as what I was hearing about it even initially, displays the most stereotypical bullshit horror sequel. I shit you not, this, a lot of, how this film feels, almost feels like a horror sequel that would have been released in, 2006. Sure, they're, attempting to, make a surprising and new kind of different storyline and, trying to touch on previous situations and even address and present, other situations and characters. But here's the thing, is that while I didn't think that Halloween Kills was the greatest movie, I didn't actually think that it was a complete shit show. In the very best, it did still feel like a theatrical follow-up, even if the comparison was, way different and way off. This film, on the other hand, even though it is almost 2 fucking hours, the only thing that they cared about in this movie was not even actually showcasing the final stand as much, but just the idea of the final showdown between Laurie and Michael, just the idea of that as promotion, as hype. And everything leading up to that, even though there are some things that could have an effect on people, and does, still, I think, to some degree, have a storyline that could even work, to Halloween Kills and everything, they're just doing what the fuck ever in this movie. They're letting characters just do and say whatever the fuck they want. It's almost like there wasn't really a script for this film. They just kind of had characters just kind of come up with something on the spot, and whatever they happen to land with, that's just what the characters happen to be doing in their lives in this movie. It feels very fucking lazy, lackluster, and honestly just fucking careless in comparison to, so far, the 3 other Halloween films I've seen, not including the Rob Zombie films. I was genuinely stunned, guys, at how much I was not giving a shit about anything up to this point. Now, again, as far as the first act goes, at least up to this point, it's basically just displaying Laurie's and Allison's lives currently. They both basically have these love interests, and honestly, this is all that the film actually introduces to their characters. Nothing about Laurie's daughter, nothing really even about Michael Myers. Just these two getting involved with these 2 random guys and just living their lives however randomly written that they could have just come up with on the spot. And every now and again just being interrogated by random people saying, oh, you got my son or my daughter killed because of you wouldn't leave Michael alone and you provoked him. That's really majority of at least setup with these characters goes. Now again, it isn't complete trash, and there is an attempt on even introducing this new character in a, I do think overall pretty interesting way. His background and, even getting involved with Allison and how that development goes, I do think that it is interesting enough. But for a final stand and all that has led to this, just, while this story isn't the worst thing it could be, and they are trying here and there and getting some things I think at least, fun, even in a bad way, that is not obviously what we needed for this type of movie. And again, while the storyline is something, it always felt like just an attempt. It never felt like anything more than that. Now, as things go on, you do start to see where they're going with this newly introduced character as far as possible potential futures go, depending on where this film actually ends up going. And again, I think of, as far as like how it connects with, Laurie's and Allison's characters, and just with like what the nature consists of. It did make me curious as to, regardless of how, whatever this story, was, it did make me curious as to how, Laurie and Allison's characters were going to be affected in this movie, like where their characters were going to go because of, whatever. And as we go on, as far as the kills go in this movie, there are kills in this movie that do fit the vibe of like, some other just nonsense filler kills like in previous films, like, for example, like Little and Big John from Halloween Kills. And while definitely not as strong or well like done or made, the actual fashion in which some of these kills are done, it does feel a lot different, as far as to what's actually at play. But I'd actually say that, with these kills, as far as like story and character development actually goes, they do feel really lazy, which, even though other installments, did have their, share of nonsense, just fillerish kills, this film did, again, just feel like all it cared about was, again, not only the, plot point of, Michael versus Laurie in their final showdown, but just the idea of that. Everything up to that point, whether it be the kills, the story, the characters, they're just not good. They're there, there are kills and there is a story, but the only thing I gave a shit about, which, was very obvious and kind of what I expected, was Michael versus Laurie. Because I'm just gonna say it, Michael in this movie, he is not a huge idea, or really even a huge threat. Much of this story is just Laurie and Allison's lives currently, and, while, again, that is fine, as far as, like, setup or whatever, that is fine, that's fair. But, again, for a final showdown movie, it just did not feel right. But now let's get to a little bit, funner of the review and, the more exciting part. That being the plot point with Michael versus Laurie. Now, I will say this. It is more or less what I expected. It is immediately much more tense. The pacing is better. Even Jamie Lee Curtis in here, I think that she gives a very good performance, as well as the directing. It is not bad. It's well enough acted, and it does feel like the most Halloween of the movie. At least getting into it, though, the plot still does have its inconsistencies and have its, layers where it does remind us that it is, still part of the movie that we've been watching. But what I will say, which I was, pretty okay with, is that this issue is mostly just for, like, setup purposes. Just, getting into the actual plot point and kind of, again, establishing it and setting it up. That is where the inconsistencies in this, kind of area of the movie really lie. But once Laurie and Michael, once their characters together are actually at play, is obviously when the film does show its best. To the point where I'd even say that, like, things that happen between Michael and Laurie, they are, not only directed well enough, but even, like, their choreography and, like, their chemistry together, it is pretty good for what it is. And I even think that, like, for as far as, like, how it's overall executed, I do think that it does, for the most part, fine with, but just while this is obviously, the strongest part of the movie and was going to be, and is the most well done, it does not make up for the movie as a whole. Overall, guys, I'm going to give Halloween Ends a 2.5 out of 10. I can just imagine how, like, entertainingly disappointing and unsatisfying the world premiere for this movie was, which, if I'm not mistaken, was actually, like, the day leading up to the Thursday night previews. Honestly, I wouldn't have even had a fucking world premiere for this movie. But yes, guys, that is going to do it for my Halloween Ends review. Again, I know that it was late, but You know, and what's funny is, like, again, this was one of the more, like, anticipated films, obviously, of October. And it was even to the point where it's like, look, I don't even gotta fucking see this in the theater. I could just watch this from my fucking couch and, you know, from home and just review it then. I could not find the strength to see this movie. And then, you know, my mom and everything wanted to see. She's like, yeah, we're gonna go see Halloween Ends, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, well, might as fucking well, right? But yes, guys, that is going to do it for this review. Let me know what you thought of it, as well as the movie down below without spoilers. I will be seeing you guys in the next review, which may be VHS 99. I believe that is going to be the next one. But I will see you guys regardless in the next video. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I hope you guys are having a great day. We'll see you in the next one, guys. Take care.